Hey there, EB here. Happy Halloween. Obviously, I'm a cow. I'm a moot point on the Anything But Bland weekly update. Love Halloween. I was saying this morning that, some people kind of feel like the fall's gloomy. I love Halloween kicking right into Thanksgiving and the holiday season. I think it's a really fun time of year. For me, I'm getting ready for ski season. So hopefully, now that I have two replaced artificial knees, I should be able to continue to ski. Looking forward to that. I don't take myself too seriously, so that's why I wore this outfit today. It's a tough time of the year for so many people who either work for the federal government or their livelihood depends on federal government workers spending money at a luncheonette or vendors of the federal government. It's really a sad time because we're coming in the holiday season. The credit card debt is exploding in our country. But the most important thing tomorrow is this is when the SNAP program that provides food for 42 million needy Americans, people that can't afford the food on their own, and additionally to the WIC program that provides services to single mothers and children that are below the poverty line. There's no money for that that's going to be allocated, even though that these departments have a reserve fund to be able to tap into. President Trump wants the blue people who rely on these federal programs, mainly Democrats, to experience the pain. Obviously, he spent the better part of the past 5 days in the Asian Peninsula, um, doing some good business for the United States. Not going to deny it. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. That he's really been extraordinary on the world stage. He's been woefully absent on the domestic stuff to be parading around the world, getting crowns and dancing when your government is shut down and people are literally without food is really one of the most amazing things to me. Food is essential. It's one thing to not have health care. And anybody can always go to the emergency room. If you need to go see a doctor, you can't afford to go to an emergency room. They have to see you under the Emergency Medical Treatment Act. Um, but food is a basic thing that if you don't have that, that creates problems. That creates people with angst. You remember a couple years ago when we had a formula shortage, and baby mothers who were nursing their children were so nervous about how do we feed these children? How do we feed them who have, certain allergies that they can't have soy or Similac or whatever the baby formula is that they have. I believe that health insurance, health care, and food are a basic human right, that any civilized modern society has to provide that for their people. Um, there's so many people that need the SNAP food programs that I worry about, that if the government shutdown goes on longer, how much longer it's going to go. Will people start reducing to crime, to break into stores to get food, or stealing from their neighbors? It's just a really, really bad situation. And I think that the Republicans are starting to see that situation, and they're starting to see that they have a president who doesn't really care, a president that isn't willing to sit down and listen to the other side, whether he's going to negotiate or not. He should listen to uh, the Democratic senators who want to talk to him about the importance of the SNAP program and these other programs, as well as the horror stories about if the Obamacare subsidies on Affordable Care Act expire on December 31st and we don't deal with it, what the cost of health insurance is going to be. It's going to go up 200%. And we just have an indifferent president. And I think when you have presidents that are so wealthy, wealthy beyond belief, like Donald Trump is, there is this feeling like it's out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't affect me, doesn't affect anybody that are in my life. And for him, it's just one big joyride. He's over in Asia. He's getting crowns. He's getting putters from the old prime minister of Japan who died, who he was close with. Um, but at home, we're suffering. As I said last week, the black unemployment rate is going up. That's a canary in the coal mine. Um, Inflation has crept up to 3.5%. We had this week the interest rates went down so that the borrowing rate is between 3.75% and 4%, which a lot of the conservatives said wasn't enough of a drop to revive the housing market. But I think John Thune, the majority leader of the Senate, understands that if you start starving out the population, it's going to affect a lot of people in red districts. For instance, Senator Hawley from Missouri, he knows that there's a ton of Republicans in his state that are on the SNAP program. That, yes, you can be conservative, but still be poor and need governmental assistance. And so they're trying to come up with a mechanism. I heard John Thune was more optimistic yesterday, even though that the Senate went home for the weekend, that a deal could be had, that there's some moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans who are trying to craft a deal where the continuing resolution or the extension of the Obamacare will go on for another year. The problem is we have these government shutdowns that pop up every 3 months. We had one last in March when Schumer agreed to continue on with the continuing resolution. So I think the Republicans are saying you can get the food program, but you're not going to get health. And the Democrats want both the food program and the Obamacare subsidies not to go up. So we'll see what happens. This morning, Trump said he wants the death penalty for the filibuster. He wants Senate Republicans to kill the ability of a filibuster for financial bills to have a 60 vote threshold. He wants it to be a majority vote. And if it's a majority vote, the Republican senators are going to agree to open up the government. They have three. They already have 3 Democratic votes, and John Fetterman, Angus King, who's an independent, and I think there's another one that has voted for it. They'll open the government. The problem is John Thune, when he became majority leader, did not said emphatically, "I will not get rid of the filibuster." It's not something that's historic from the beginning of the Constitution, but it's certainly been ingrained in the Senate. And in all fairness, the Democrats wanted to get rid of the filibuster during Biden's term so that they can ram through legislation. So what Trump is asking is not something that the Democrats haven't tried to do. I think it would be a mistake to get rid of the filibuster. I think it gives those that are in the minority a voice, but I certainly understand why Trump wants it to be killed. The Hulu series, I think, is really interesting on the Murdaugh, a family murder. I think last night's episode, how they portrayed Stephen Smith and Sandy Smith, really was excellent. I think we saw the raw nature. Hey, thanks, Kathleen. I think we saw the raw nature of Alex last night in the 5th episode. This is a desperate man. He used to be able to use his charm to get what he wants, and now you see the desperation over money and his concern over Paul, although he doesn't seem to have much compassion for Paul, and he doesn't seem to accept responsibility for what Paul has become. The two rawest moments for me were when Maggie was pushed into the chair, and you saw that look of fear in her eyes, like, oh my God, is he really going to hit me? This guy's a monster in front of me. And the second one was when Paul had to admit to Buster, I'm getting exactly what I deserve in life. He recognized that he had the hand in Mallory Beach's death, and all of his problems are a result of his bad behavior. Clearly an overindulged, undisciplined kid, a kid that the parents never set boundaries for. The rampant drinking, I think led to his behavior, but it's really extraordinary when you see Maggie trying to leave at the end of the show to go to Edisto and get Paul and bring him with him. She was so fearful that Alex was going to come down, and he did in a golf cart. You just saw the fear in her face of, oh my God, I'm really married to a monster. And the scene of when she saw him in the hotel with, it appeared to be a prostitute, and that prostitute was running out scared for her life, and then she was pushed right back in the room. I think, and I'm not sure how true that was, but it really showed Maggie who she was married to. I did, you see the way that Alex treats his brother, Randy. Um, it's just an extremely over entitled, undisciplined, unsympathetic family. They are really getting what they deserve and how they treated people and how they viewed themselves. And Alex, how he brushed off Tony in the show. I think it's really well done. Jason Clarke is just doing an amazing job, and so is Patricia Arquette. So the interesting thing is our district court judge, Cameron Curry, she is a district court judge in South Carolina, is going to hear the motions made by Jim Comey and Letitia James that Lindsay Halligan, who is the attorney who was appointed by Donald Trump, she's the former Miss Colorado, who's a lawyer but an insurance defense lawyer, who was appointed to be the Eastern District Virginia district attorney. She's the one who brought the charges before the grand jury for Comey, as well as Letitia James. They have made motions to have the indictments dropped because she is the one who was improperly appointed as a temporary appointment. Cam Curry, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, Virginia's in the Fourth Circuit with Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and the United States Virgin Islands, has designated that Cameron Curry, our district court judge, is going to hear these motions. Now, the question is, if these indictments are dismissed, can they be rebrought by somebody different in their office? That's going to be the interesting thing. But South Carolina is going to be on the map. The economic growth, I was listening to Steve Ratner, who is the financial money manager for Bloomberg, Mayor Bloomberg, who's a billionaire. He said the economic growth that we're experiencing, as well as the stock market growth, is AI based. It's 85% based on artificial intelligence. We're not increasing our economy because we're manufacturing more cars or we're manufacturing more widgets, the things that Donald Trump ran on. He said we're going to bring manufacturing back to our country. Remember that. We're going to bring beef back to our country, even though last week he announced that he's going to be importing beef from Argentina after he gave him $40 billion bailout. But the manufacturing sector is not increasing. What is increasing is AI. They're going to be building these massive storage facilities that go for miles, that have these supercomputers that can maintain a tremendous amount of energy for the artificial intelligence. The problem is the electricity bills for these are extraordinary in the electrical usage. And what's going to end up happening is our electrical rates are going to go up. And Dominion already announced, that's who we are in South Carolina, Dominion Energy, Duke Energy in North Carolina. Dominion has already stated that they are going to increase the rates. I think Trump's trip to Malaysia and Cambodia and China and Japan was, you have to say it was successful. Japan said that they're going to continue with the $10 billion investment that they've already said they were going to do a year ago. Now, Trump announced it as if it was something new. It's not anything new. It was already on the books. They had just stalled it because of the tariffs. So they are going to resume their $10 billion investment. So they say. Trump is telling everybody to go buy Toyotas, great cars. They run well. My kids always had a 4Runner when they were younger. And I think Sydney has now the Lexus, which is my daughter, which is the higher end, I guess, of Toyota. He was highly successful in getting a peace agreement signed between Malaysia and Cambodia. Tariffs were lowered by 10%. with China. So there's going to be a lowering of the I think the tariffs from 55 to 45%, with a commitment from China that this will be a year-to-year agreement, that they'll go for a year without restricting the use of the rare minerals. That's the real key that Trump wanted, was China was restricting the exporting of rare minerals, which goes into batteries, semiconductors, things that we really, really need on a daily basis. And they agreed to cut back on the creation, the exporting of fentanyl. What you didn't see is, Trump talking to them about human rights, about how the China treats the Uyghurs, the Christian Chinese, that they're persecuted, and Taiwan. Remember, any other president who's ever met with these autocrats have always gone through and mentioned Taiwan, mentioned human rights, mentioned the Uyghurs. I told you last week that Trump is transactional. He's only concerned about the economics. So they will cut economic deals with him so long as he doesn't talk about human rights. So that was a very successful trip by any stretch of the imagination. He bends other countries to his will. We'll talk about Canada, how that's not working quite out what he thought. By the way, the Supreme Court's going to hear that issue of tariffs, and Trump telegraphed that it is not a national emergency on why he's doing the tariffs. He raised their tariffs and cut off negotiations in retaliation for them doing the commercial last week where they used Reagan's speech about how Reagan was anti-tariff. Ontario did this. Doug Ford's brother, the other Ford, who wasn't as crazy as the other Ford that passed away a couple years ago. He did this out of retaliation and said, "I'm retaliating against you because you ran that commercial with Reagan." It was true what they put about Reagan. They just took the words that were used and mixed the sentences like one before the other, but they never changed the words. But Trump was seeking retribution for that, and I think the Supreme Court's going to look at that. The Senate finally broke with Trump and disagreed with him and said they're not going to go along with him assessing Canada at 10%, an additional 10% on tariffs. This is the first time that Republican senators have broken with Donald Trump. Remember, he is a lame duck president. Assuming that he doesn't get a third term, and we heard that Steve Bannon came up with this idea that he would run as a vice president to J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance would win, then resign, and then Trump would become elevated. And it's not a two-term situation, although I think it would be challenged. Trump said he wasn't interested in doing that. That was Steve Bannon's idea. Steve Bannon has come up with another proposal, but he won't release it. Hurricane Melissa just absolutely tore the shreds off of Jamaica. I've been watching a little bit on TV. It's so sad. Trump fired everyone this week who's in charge of the Federal Commission of overseeing construction projects on federal buildings. Why did he do that? Because he has not submitted plans to this commission, to the Congressional Commission over Federal Buildings, in connection with the wrecking of the East Wing of the White House to build the ballroom. Just so you know, 66% of the people are against what he's doing in the ballroom. 66%. That's not just Democrats. That's got to be a lot of Republicans too. Feels like that with the government shutdown, we don't need to be spending that kind of money, even though it's coming from private donors. That's also a concern for many people, that we're taking money from private donors for governmental functions instead of the government funding these type of projects. Remember, when you look at the White House, we see the White House. If you're going to build something to the right of it that's going to be 3 times the size of the White House, that's what's going to take your attention. So he fired everybody. He put somebody in place in July who is one of his loyalists. And that person has said that these departments have no jurisdiction over construction until Trump actually destroys the federal buildings that he wants to destroy, or the federal structures, and begins construction. And that's why Trump was allowed to bring a wrecking ball to the East Wing at night. He's allowed to wreck any federal building he wants. It's the rebuilding of it or the modifications of it that gets the commission involved. Um, Trump immediately directed Pentagon to start testing nuclear weapons. It's scary. I watched the House of Dynamite this earlier this week. It's very scary. It's a situation, a really great cast. It's on Netflix, where a nuclear weapon is launched and we send off defensive missiles to try to intercept it, and they don't intercept it, and it's heading for downtown Chicago. The movie ends without it saying, does it explode? How do we, or do we retaliate in kind? Do we retaliate beforehand? Is it a dud? Is it not nuclear? But the point is, the Pentagon was very upset about the movie because they believe that 100% of the time we'll be able to shoot out any kind of missile. I understand why Trump wants to test nuclear weapons. Obviously, Kim Jong-un does it all the time. Putin did it last week. So I can understand why he wants to do it. But the more we get comfortable testing nuclear weapons around the world, the easier it's going to be for somebody finally one of these days to use it once again. Um, the the Mamdani election next week in New York City is the scariest thing I've ever seen. He is a dual citizen with Uganda. Uganda persecutes women, they persecute homosexuals. He will not give up his citizenship. He's got a resume that's thinner than a cocktail napkin, as Andrew Cuomo said. I'm not an Andrew Cuomo fan. I'm not a Curtis Siwa fan. He was a guardian angel. I really appreciate all he's done with that. He risked his life for many, many years guarding the New York subway when New York was unsafe during the David Dinkins era and Mayor Koch era. But Mamdani's going to kill New York City. There is an exodus happening right now where people are buying property in Connecticut and in Westchester, New York, leaving Center City. The numbers don't add up. Even Mayor Bill de Blasio said his numbers don't add up for the $8 billion of free busing, lower rent, and city-owned grocery stores. He is, I believe, a dangerous, dangerous man. And I think that if I was sitting in New York City, I would feel I would not feel comfortable at all if he won this election. And Renee and I used to go to New York City every November. Never will I go back if he's mayor. I have now look at Chicago, downtown Chicago, which we love, and Atlanta to be cities where we would go, and Miami, by the way. Um, Hamas says that it is delaying the hostage handover. And of course, Bibi Netanyahu did what Bibi does and immediately did powerful military strikes in Gaza. Notwithstanding that, Trump says that we still have a ceasefire, even though now this is the second bombing that has taken place. Um, so we'll see how that shakes out. The House GOP, James Comer runs it from Kentucky. That committee has done a report to DOJ and asked them to investigate Biden's use of the auto pen. Evidently, there's a lot of people who are saying that the auto pen was used without Biden approving of presidential orders or pardons. So we'll have to see where that is at. Um, you know, one of the things that we're starting to see from Republicans, there's this conflict now between the border czar and Homeland Security. Um, Homeland Security wants to pick up everybody. And you remember when Trump was elected, Tom Homan said, we're going to go after the worst of the worst, the drug addicts, the rapists, the criminals, the murderers, and have at it. Get rid of these illegal people that are criminals like that. But now they're going after ordinary people. I represent a lot of Mexican restaurants and a lot of the people who work there who are great people, friends of mine, people that I know who may not be here legally. They're making the decision to leave because they don't want to be picked up. They don't want to be sent to Sudan or a country that's not their home country, and they want to be able to make provisions to get their money and take care of their family. So they're leaving voluntarily. Um, the NBA gambling scandal is a big thing. Is Chauncey Billups just a habitual gambler, or did he get himself in a situation? He was the former coach who's suspended from the Portland Trailblazers. By the way, he's a Hall of Famer in 2024. The prop bets are the problem because a player can control whether he scores his 20-point average, or he can fake an injury to get out of the game at a certain period of time. Um, they always say that in a poker game, if you don't know who the mark is in the room, you are the mark. I think this is a problem because of all the DraftKings and different online gambling that we have, and young kids gambling. They used to just gamble over the outcome of a game. Now it's how long the national anthem is going to be, or does somebody have two catches or four catches? So, it used to be that college kids who made no money would throw a game for $5,000. But now you got Terry Rozier, who has made over 135 million in his career so far, and he's got 95 million more under contract, who's doing this. And I was talking to my associate Scott Magilla yesterday, and he thinks these people are fueled to win, and the thrill of the gambling, that they just have to do it in every facet of their life, whether it's the competitiveness on the floor or the competitiveness in gambling. What we're seeing now, though, is you're seeing Donald Trump, how he runs his life, and uh, one of the people that he did look up to and really followed his advice was a guy named Roy Cohn, who was a lawyer in the 50s, worked for the McCarthy Commission. Roy Cohn was a very well known, highly aggressive lawyer. He's the one who told Trump, never, ever admit you're wrong, never apologize, and use the legal system as your weapon. And that's why Trump's been over 3,500 lawsuits. He can withstand a lawsuit, even if it's going to be a loss. And so he wears you down in the justice system. People who aren't prepared to, aren't familiar with being, the lawsuit, and aren't familiar with, being in the court system. Dr. Phil, his media company, which is called Merit Street, has filed for bankruptcy, and he himself lost a trial that determines what is the future for his company. So this is a guy. I was on Dr. Phil after the Zachary Hammond case in 2017. That was the shooting of the young kid, 19 years old, in Seneca, South Carolina, where John Tiller, a police officer from Seneca, shot him in the back as he was fleeing away from Hardee's parking lot after selling a joint, or trying to sell one joint. I was on the Dr. Phil show. Hardworking guy, films like 8 episodes a day, does all of it within like 2 months, every episode that you see all year. Again, the GOP Senate offered a rare rebuke of President Trump and his economic agenda. They voted that the tariffs that he put on Canada cannot go forward, nor the 50% tariff against Brazil. Remember, Brazil's prosecuting one of its former prime ministers, who Trump likes very much, was another Trump-like guy. This is the Senate for the second time, the Republican Senate, going against Trump. Carter's baby clothing store is closing 150 of its stores and cutting jobs. We're seeing a ton of companies cutting jobs, and I'll go into that in a little bit. 70% of the Democrats, up from 51%, are so extreme right now. 70% of the people say that the Democratic Party is too extreme. They support the three things that resonate in our country: open borders, soft crime penalties, and aggressive trans ideology. So I think the Democrats are going to have to get away from that. I think that Mamdani is going to win, but the question is going to be who wins the New Jersey gubernatorial race and the Virginia race. Does the two women who are running as Democrats win in New Jersey and Virginia. I think the New Jersey one's going to pull it out, and that'll speak a lot about it. Remember, since 2015, Trump and the Republicans are touted tout how much they hate Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, and they have better policies that they're going to put in place. Since 2015, just want you to know. And Trump has promised 3 or 4 different times that he was going to release a new health care plan. The Republicans and Trump have never put forward a new health care plan to replace or fix the problems of the Affordable Care Act. I know that the Affordable Care Act needs work to be done with it. Absolutely has to be fixed on different things. But the Republicans who are just saying, let's get rid of Affordable Care Act without another solution, that is not the answer. Sick to my stomach that Kamala Harris is hinting at another presidential run by saying that she's not done. I think she needs to just get a job or go home, write a book, do whatever she wants to do, be a consultant, but she does not need to run for president. One, I don't think she has the mettle to be a successful president. I think there's been so much damage done to her brand that it can't happen. Gavin Newsom also indicated that he was considering a presidential run. I just don't think we're ready for another a California type politician. I get it that he had to govern liberally out there because it is a liberal state, but he's a tough guy. He can go toe to toe. He's charismatic, but I don't think he's the answer. The person who is leading the polls is Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of Indiana and the Secretary of Transportation under Biden. I think he's the most eloquent of all the Democrats. I just don't think our country is ready for electing a homosexual president, even though we have we've had a few homosexual governors, one in Colorado. We have a homosexual Senator Tammy, I forget her last name, from Wisconsin. I just don't think we're ready. I think the guy that really could be the spoiler is Rahm Emanuel. He was mayor of Chicago. He was chief of staff to Bill Clinton. He was ambassador to either Japan or China. He was in the House of Representatives. Just a tremendous resume and tough as nails with a pretty big mouth. And that seems to what you need. Nobody is listening. Nobody is saying truth to power to Kamala Harris to tell her to stand down, that she's really not the candidate that should be leading the party. The Fed, again, cut their rates to the lowest level in 3 years, cutting the range from 3.75 to 4%. This is the first time in nearly 3 years that the benchmark rate has dropped to this low level. Again, the Trump administration won't use the contingency funds to pay for the November food stamp benefits. FBI Director Kash Patel announced another major bust of like 30 people. There's a part of Philadelphia in Kensington and Allegheny Avenue in Northeast Philadelphia where they have this like trank city. This trank is this tranquilizer drug that makes people walk around like zombies and has flesh-eating bacteria in their skin. And they've let the people concentrate there and drug dealers deal there so that everybody kind of will be contained. Well, it destroyed, one of the neatest areas of Philadelphia. That's where Rocky was filmed. That's where Tacchinelli's Pizzeria. Tacchinelli's is this unbelievable pizzeria where they turn on this brick oven that cooked bread from the late 1700s. They turn it on at 3 o'clock. It heats up, takes about 6 hours, and there's only about an hour's worth of pies that you could put in there, the dough for the pizza. And you have to call in advance. It's called Tacchinelli's. Well, all these places are so dangerous, people don't go to anymore. And I applaud Kash Patel and the FBI for finally arresting a lot of the drug dealers and trying to clean that area up. President Trump defended his decision to pardon the founder of Binance, who goes by the nickname CZ. Trump claims that I had no idea who he was. It just appeared to me that he was wrongfully persecuted, not prosecuted. Persecuted is what Trump said, even though he was convicted. He runs the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange. Trump said he's never heard him, yet his family's made, Trump's family kids have made $1.5 billion trading with him, and him being the foundation for their Bitcoin business. It's just, when his mouth is moving, he's lying. 38,000 different lies that he has told in his first and second administration so far. Um, Furloughed federal workers are filing for jobless benefits, but they're not getting them because they're technically not unemployed. It's really a catch-22 for these people. They finally caught the Louvre robbers. Had to be an inside job. Whether they ever get back those $100 million worth of crown jewels, that's a different story. The Illinois deputy was found guilty of murdering and shooting Sonia Massey. She was the black woman who called 911 asking for help. The South Carolina Administrative Court told a wealthy Isle of Palms homeowner, you got to take down your seawall. He had $362,000 of fines against him, which is a large amount of fine. They did cancel that fine, but the administrative law judge told him to take down the seawall, which is a huge issue for anybody that lives on the beach because of the erosion issues. The automaker GM just cut 1,700 jobs in Michigan and in Ohio. It's the third rounds of layoffs that have happened at GM this week. Trump has called publicly for the prosecution of more of his political foes. This time he's focusing on Jack Smith, who was the special counsel for the January 6th criminal litigation in Washington, D.C., as well as the documents case in Florida. And now he's calling for Merrick Garland to be prosecuted, the former attorney general under Joe Biden. Trump, wants the $230 million that he applied to the Justice Department for all of his cases. Todd Blanche is the second in command at the Attorney General's office who ultimately will sign this. And I learned that once it's signed, there's very little that anybody can do in court or anywhere to prevent Donald Trump from getting that $230 million. June Lockhart, who was in Lost in Space and Lassie and Petticoat Junction, she died at 100 years old. Adrian Peterson, who was one of the most prolific running backs from Oklahoma and rushed over 14,000 yards in the NFL, played for 7 different teams. He has had his second DUI arrest in 1 year. It just goes to show you that these former athletes, it's really difficult for them to transition back to the regular world. An aide to the Massachusetts governor was charged in a cocaine trafficking scheme where he allegedly linked 21 grams of cocaine to be shipped to a state office building, which is stunning to me. The 3 college football teams, or 4, that are really a surprise this year to me. Texas A&M remains undefeated. Vanderbilt, of course. Georgia Tech, the 2 Brainiac schools, one in the ACC, Vanderbilt in the SEC, and Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin's the hottest coach in the world. This week, Brian Kelly was fired after the loss to Texas A&M on Saturday night. He had 7 years and $59 million left on the contract. Here's the problem, folks. You're going to get fired as a coach in the SEC basically after 4 years if you don't win. Even if you only average losing 2 games a year, the expectations like at LSU are unrealistic. 3 coaches have been fired after winning national championships: Nick Saban, Ed Adjerian, and Les Miles. And they were fired within 3 years of winning those championships. It's really hard to get through the SEC and not have 2 and 3 losses. And so I don't blame these coaches for wanting a 10-year deal. The problem is that it's the alumni who give this NLI money or pay off these coaches' buyouts that run the program. And the athletic director did not want to fire Brian Kelly, but the governor came in with a lot of big donors in Louisiana and got him fired. I think Brian Kelly was never a good fit at LSU. He's a northern coach. He's coached at Central Michigan. I think he can get the Michigan State job. John Smith, who's the coach there, is not doing well, and I think he's going to get fired. Um, I think the hottest coaching candidates are Oregon's coach Dan Lanning, Eli Drinkowitz, the Louisville coach, and the Tulane coach are hot commodities. Also, Notre Dame Marcus Freeman, who's an African American young coach, is unbelievable. Yamamoto, he pitched almost a complete game. He's going to pitch tonight in Game 6. He's unbelievable. I think the Toronto Blue Jays have serious hitters. Vlad Guerrero's got like 7 home runs in the postseason. I think they can win it off tonight, even though there was the 18-inning game classic where Freddie Freeman had the walk-off home run. In that game, the 18-inning game that went to 3 in the morning, Ohtani reached base 9 times. He had 2 home runs and was 4 for 4. I think going forward, they're going to intentionally walk him. Finally, Kelsey Grammer, at 70 years old, had another kid. He has 8 kids now, so he and Alec Baldwin are trying to get to double figures on kids. So let's look at some of the audience questions that we have here. People are talking a lot about the government shutdown. I talked about that. They want to know about what I thought about the Trump's trip to the Far East. I talked about that. One of the issues that we see here is, this Justice Department seems to be now the private law firm, and people are concerned about that and asking questions about it. The private law firm for Donald Trump. The question is, how do I feel about the U.S. providing Israel financial aid to help pay for Israel's college tuition and health care for their citizens? I got a real problem with that. We don't do that for our country, although last week Trump said he was going to cut the student loan debt. I have a real problem with that. We should provide as much money as we can to Israel for its defense and in their in different industries, but they can take care of their own citizens. Off topic, Eric, but it just hit me. 2 of the most notorious cases of filicide in U.S. history came from South Carolina, a small state. Alex Murdaugh and Susan Smith. Tracy Badley asked, what's going on? Yeah, that is a real issue. Those are the 2 most notorious trials we've had in our state, other than Dylan Roof and Pee Wee Gaskins. I've given you my thought about the White House reconstruction. I think there needs to be some oversight on this, and I think it's going to be a real eyesore to have this monster 90,000 square foot ballroom. Somebody asked about the assault charges for the Beaufort officer Squires that pointed the gun at the young kids. He was arrested Wednesday, but as we said on Cup of Justice today, I don't think the charges were strong enough. Next, we talked about Israel's launch of strikes. People wanted to ask about whether the ceasefire, they're not returning the hostage remains. And so Trump could say all he wants that the ceasefire is still good. It's not. Again, the anti-drug strikes that are happening in the Pacific, whether it's the Colombians or Venezuelans, it's a real problem because Congress now wants to know, what evidence do you have of this? This is going to start a potential war with Venezuela. The record-breaking Category 5 hurricane we talked about in Jamaica, Melissa, is just so scary. You see this year in, year out, that this is Hurricane Alley. The Texas Attorney General has sued Tylenol over autism claims. I just don't understand it. We went from autism being caused by vaccines to now autism is caused by Tylenol. That anti-Prop 50 campaign collapses, in California. What is going to happen, whether they can add more Democratic seats. Judge ruled that Charlie Kirk's murder suspect can wear civilian clothes but must be restrained in the courtroom. I agree with that. I talked about the SNAP emergency benefits ending already, and that's a grave concern to me. I think it's a basic human right to not go hungry in our country. And I focused hard on the new Murdaugh episode about Stephen Smith. So that's it for the weekly update. Everybody have a great, safe Halloween with your kids tonight. Give out candy. Now let's look at some of the people that spoke. Kathleen Jensen said she loves my costume and she thanked me for my thoughts on the filibuster. She agrees on some of my comments I made regarding the Hulu series. Susan Kelly said she likes my costume. Thank you very much. Um, Pinky Duke said she hopes I truly decide to run as a governor. As a Republican, you might get elected. I'd love to be a politician, but I just don't think anybody's going to elect me, being from Philadelphia, being Jewish, and having a pretty loud mouth and being pretty opinionated. I just don't see it happen. But I do say what I feel and what I believe, and I think I can be a different kind of politician. But nobody's going to elect me. But I appreciate that very much. Christy Lyons said, "I love your costume and happy Halloween." Happy Halloween to you, Christy, and everybody. Take care and moo moo out. So I'll see you next week.